Pepsi Watson, Crime and Justice TV. This video is a comprehensive response to episode 2 of Channel 4's new Crime and Punishment series, which airs every Monday on Channel 4 at 9 p.m. I was detained for 2 years at HMP Winchester, where filming took place for this series. Chris Rowe and 72 Films filmed at HMP Winchester and produced this documentary series for Channel 4. I mentioned in the first episode response that the Ministry of Justice are very careful in what footage they allow to be aired on mainstream television, and so what they do is push a particular narrative to the public. A narrative which hides and covers up key issues: abuse, corruption, human rights abuses and injustice in the modern British penal system. So in this video, I shall offer my response with the aim of challenging this state-sponsored particular narrative, and I shall offer my lived experience of being detained at HMP Winchester in doing so. I was detained at HMP Winchester throughout the entirety of filming in 2018. So straight away in episode 2, a voiceover says right at the start of the episode, everybody involved in the criminal justice system knows how acute the crisis is. They say this, but everybody remains quiet to protect their salary, their pension and their jobs. Everybody who works in prisons in modern Britain, from the chaplains to the cleaners to the probation officers to the prison officers, the governors, the IMB or Inmate Monitoring Board, everybody sees daily the mental health epidemic, the suicides, the mass self-harming, the disproportionate suffering of those with learning disabilities, the racism, the injustice with IPPs, the abuse and the corruption, but everybody chooses to stay silent. No one goes to Panorama and no one blows the whistle. Therefore, we have an entire modern British penal system complicit in a modern penal system which churns out lifetime chronic recidivists and churns out a conveyor belt of dead bodies whom died in preventable circumstances. And a modern penal system which fails the taxpayer, fails the people, fails those detained, and fails the workforce working in such institutions. The modern British penal estate is riddled and is endemic with inequality and injustice. Martin Luther King said this: "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Luther King also said this: "A man dies when he refuses to stand up for that which is right. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for justice. A man dies when he refuses to take a stand for that which is true." Nelson Mandela said this: "As long as poverty, injustice and gross inequality persist in our world, none of us can truly rest." Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality." And Ella Wheeler Wilcox said this: "To sin by silence when they should protest makes cowards of men." So I have written about the subject of those working so closely yet remaining quiet with such severe human rights abuses in the modern British penal system. In my 40,000 word polemic on IPP and modern British criminal justice, IPP the Trilogy, the mass mental slaughter of the disappeared, in section 8 titled Divide and Conquer for Whistleblowers, I said the following, excuse me: "At present, potential defectors remain silent. IPP is testing the ethical frameworks of those working in many professions associated with IPP. These professions include prison officers, mental health, counselling, probation, psychology and drug and alcohol practitioners. Practitioners of forensic psychology with experience of 30 years in the current climate have been known to make astonishing statements. Statements include, "It's a travesty of justice that this man is still in prison." and parole boards adjourn parole hearings for IPPs to have them assessed for personality disorders to keep them in prison a bit longer. These professionals responsible for these statements refuse to go on the record. Excuse me. More concerning is that professionals responsible for these and similar statements then proceed to write reports condemning IPPs to further years of post-tariff IPP detention. These professionals are understandably unwilling to risk throwing away their life's work, their 20 to 30-year working careers, their salary, pension and reputation. Understandable unwillingness aside, these professionals are certainly aware that they are contributing to A, the mass mental slaughter of the disappeared, and B, a mass miscarriage of justice affecting thousands of people of proportions unparalleled perhaps by anything similar in modern criminal justice anywhere else in Western Europe, and finally C, slow, horrific, self-inflicted, preventable IPP deaths. This is a hard pill to swallow, one which may remain stuck in the throat for a while. Tremendous courage and extraordinary bravery is required of a person to digest this pill. Defection will not undermine your life's work. It may be the making of you. Abandoning yourself to the cause of justice and fairness is an opportunity. Opportunity in life is often missed because it is dressed in overalls and looks like too much hard work. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. Mastering the Art of Timing is a play practiced by Machiavellian-type minds in the pursuit of power. Master the art of timing for the cause of justice and fairness and to protect life. Master the art of timing in your life journey. The time to defect is now. Your sacrifice may deliver the blow which influences the necessary retrospective legislation that prevents further IPP deaths. Instead of undermining your life's work, this may be the making of you. As you struggle to adhere to an ethical code of practice, consider adherence to the truth. Realize the truth. Watch and listen and observe the way things are. Sacrifice your indulgence in selfish habits and moods. Give it all up for the welfare of all sentient beings suffering in IPP hell. Move towards truth and you will realize truth in your own life rather than just living in a perfunctory, habitual way. Exchange immoral, selfish, unkind, unjust pursuits for being one who is moving towards impeccability, generosity, morality, and compassionate action in the world. If you do not, will not, cannot, then what use is your life if you will only use it for nothing other than self-indulgence? Defect and blow the whistle. Live the truth, be the truth, realize the truth in your own life. Recognize your true nature as one with the ultimate absolute truth or the eternal bliss of the deathless realm. Be the truth. Justice is truth. Do we really have a country if we don't have justice? Unprecedented self-harm and IPP self-inflicted deaths have been noted by former parole board chair Nick Hardwick. Nick Hardwick said the following: urgent action is needed as some prisoners who have lost hope of release are resorting to killing themselves. Hardwick also said the levels of suicide, assault and self-harm is unacceptably high. It's the fault of political and policy decisions that should have been put right years ago. The Attorney General remains defiant. The current Justice Secretary remains defiant. In September 2017, Nick Hardwick told the Justice Committee to get a grip, and they didn't. Justice will prevail. Potential defectors, whistleblowers, in your silence, as you sit with only yourself and your conscience, consider the magnitude of defecting. The lives you will touch, the children's lives you will touch, the lives that you will save. Be decisive, be bold, and be brave. Be comforted, for the righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all of their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. A righteous person may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers from them all, delivers him from them all. He protects all his bones, not one of them will be broken. The English language is made up of vowels and consonants. Verbs, nouns and adjectives are created and used by combining said vowels and consonants. It is an impossibility to think that a combination of these sounds and words, or that words on a page, could ever explain or ascertain the rewards for those brave beings who defect, who choose to live the truth. Fortune favours the brave. Have faith, for men and women of faith have courage. Be courageous and your soul will shine more brightly than the colours of the most spectacular rainbow. Do what is right and do what is fair. Do what is just, and your life, the lives of your husbands, your wives, your children will be touched by the light of the furthest stars. And do not worry. Do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, or what you will wear. Life is more than food. And the ravens, they do not sow or reap, they have no storeroom or barn, yet they are fed. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Who with you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the lilies grow. They do not labour or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendour was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you? O ye of little faith, and do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. For the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. So think about the impact that you can have upon so many lives if you are brave enough to stand up against the human rights abuses that you are witnessing day in, day out, working in the modern British penal system. And it's a heavy burden to carry, a burden which you will be free from if you stand up and expose what is going on. So at 1 minute in, episode 2 tells us that the IMB has warned in a report in January 2018 that HMP Winchester was teetering on the edge, and it was only the resilience of staff that had prevented serious disruption. The narrator says that with rising drug use, violence and self-harm, the prison has been placed in special measures. So the prison is now under the spotlight. The prison is on the radar of the Ministry of Justice, and therefore immense pressure is put upon the governor of the prison. At 2 minutes in, we again, similar to episode 1, observe blood and self-harming, which men detained at HMP Winchester are routinely inflicting upon themselves. The narrator goes on to say that the prison is one of the most overcrowded in England. I remember working in reception towards the end of my time there, and one of the evenings, it was a sunny evening, and I walked along the prison from the unit that I was housed all the way to reception with a veteran prison officer, and he told me that 25 years ago, the prison had half the number of prisoners that it has today, yet there was double the amount of staff. At 2 minutes 20, the viewer is then introduced to a prisoner focus group, where a professional-looking lady I've never once seen in HMP Winchester is seen asking prisoners in what sounds like a caring manner about their quality of life in HMP Winchester. This is theatrical, state-sponsored, well-timed propaganda nonsense orchestrated for and only for the cameras. I was detained in this prison for 2 years and have never ever once heard of or seen a prisoner focus group. Quality of life in HMP Winchester is not fit for a dog. 4 men committed suicide during my time at HMP Winchester, and for the prison to then claim on this documentary production that the prison is taking a proactive approach in liaising with prisoners regarding quality of life at HMP Winchester is deceitful and dishonest. At 3 minutes in, there is a shot of new recruit prison officer Sophie Wilkins. Seeing Sophie Wilkins brought a smile to my face. So Sophie Wilkins is at that time in 2018 was a fairly new recruit prison officer. She was young, she was educated, and she was a breath of fresh air in the prison at that time. There was 2 or 3 new recruit prison officers that I built and developed rapport with during my time there, throughout tough times and throughout the immensely, pressurized parole board process as a short Tower 5 PP. That was Sophie Wilkins, Officer Perry, and Prison Officer Daniel Brookfield. At the moment we have all this hype and hysteria about all these veteran prison officers leaving the modern British prison service, and rightly so, because they're quitting and resigning before their time is up, because they're working in a demoralised workforce, and many of them have just had enough. Their expertise and wisdom and insight and experience is invaluable and irreplaceable. Yet at the same time, these new recruit prison officers who I've mentioned, Mr. Petty, Sophie Wilkins, and Daniel Brookfield, they are an inspiration, and they represent the future of the modern prison service. And this should give us hope and optimism. These are the next generation prison officers. And I observed all 3 of these new recruit prison officers practice the highest levels of professionalism while I was detained at HMP Winchester, practicing that consistent, unconditional, positive regard for prisoners with a whole range of complex mental health problems and entrenched criminal attitudes and beliefs, drug problems, mental health problems, physical health problems, self-harm problems. And I just observed them work tirelessly to maintain the smooth running of the prison, along with the veteran prison officers. And they are, as well as the veteran prison officers, unsung heroes of the modern British prison system. At 3 minutes 22 seconds, we are introduced to the number 1 governor, Stephanie Roberts Bibby. As a person, Stephanie is a nice lady. As a professional, I saw Stephanie more in an hour-long episode of Crime and Punishment than I ever did in person or on the frontline prison landings in 2 years at HMP Winchester. In the 90s, prison governors, they had a presence. They were on the landings, they were inspecting cells, they were hands-on leadership, mucking in at the servery at lunch and dinner times to help the prison officers, inspiring the frontline prison officers. But today in the modern British penal system, you never see a governor. You rarely ever see them. In the modern British penal system, you just don't see a prison governor. And on the landings, on the front line, you overhear prison officers venting their frustrations at the latest prison governor to come into the prisons and just, it seems, piss everybody off. The prison service is a demoralised workforce, and effective leadership is critical in modernising and uplifting this neglected workforce, but inspirational leadership is unheard of in the modern British penal system. Managers, they manage resources and people, they manage stock, staff rotas and holidays, etc. Leaders inspire. Great teams are led by great leaders, and great teams achieve great things. Leaders inspire their teams to believe the impossible is possible. The leadership style of prison governors like Stephanie is lackluster, low energy, low stamina, and counterproductive. The Ministry of Justice needs to flood the modern British penal system with proven effective leaders, and this is where investment is needed. If investment is focused on this area, leadership, the Ministry of Justice would see swift improvements across the entirety of the prison estate. The customer does not come first. Your staff come first. Look after your staff, and rest assured your staff will take care of the customer. The customer in this instance is the public, or protection of the public. The modern British Tory state has abandoned the entire prison officer workforce, and not only have they abandoned them, they are fighting them in the courts in legal issues regarding striking. The POA, or Prison Officers Association, is constantly at loggerheads with the Ministry of Justice and struggle to even get a meeting with politicians to voice their concerns, and this situation is a disgrace. Modern thinking effective leaders can be sourced from a range of different sources, the military, the NHS, even retail, as well as sourced from within the prison service itself via the promotion of veteran three-stripe officers such as custody managers like Yandel and Mark Jones at HMP Winchester. These men would make outstanding prison governors. Listening to HMP Winchester Governor Stephanie Roberts-Bibby talking is very sad. She's clearly up against it with the pressures, but then her salary reflects those pressures. You have over here the real world, the reality of working as a prison officer in a broken prison estate, working in the most hostile and violent working conditions in the entire of Western Europe. Then over here, you have the number one governor of HMP Winchester in a completely different universe, in a closed office typing away on a keyboard, talking about wanting prisoners to come out of their rooms. Rooms? This is a 200-plus-year-old draconian, violent, Victorian, overcrowded slum. Men detained here do not live in rooms. Between 4 and 12 minutes in, the viewer observes the prison deteriorate with rioting, flooding out, people smashing up their cells, people jumping on the netting, and people refusing to come out of the yard from exercise. We also observe scores and scores of prisoners not receiving their medication on time. Many of these prisoners have personality disorders. What happened here at that time when I was detained here is that people started enduring catastrophic breakdown in mental health and started to suffer mental health delirium on a mass scale with the regime. We were banged up for 23 hours a day and 15 minutes, so we were only coming out for 45 minutes a day, 7 days a week if we were lucky. So when we came out for the 45 minutes, prisoners would just not want to bang back up again. At this time, the prison was just pure chaos. It was non-stop self-harming, violence, drug abuse, rioting, fires, fighting, assaults and attacks on prison officers on the front line. Just complete non-stop mayhem, and every day was a challenge for the prison and its staff to maintain control of the prison. The IMB was correct in their 2018 January report in saying that the only reason this prison did not burn to the ground in a riot leading to major loss of life was due to the hard work and resilience of the prison officers at HMP Winchester, and they get absolutely zero credit for their bravery and hard work because the Scum, or the Sun, and the Daily Fail, or the Daily Mail, convince the taxpayer that these prisons are holiday camps. At 14 minutes in, the viewer observes a command centre being set up by prison governor Stephanie Roberts-Bibby. This is modern-day prison service leadership. A number one governor hiding away in an office somewhere in the prison, eating chips, while frontline prison officers are dealing with the chaos and doing not only the job of a prison officer, but also doing the job on the front line of a mental health worker, a doctor, a nurse, a counsellor, a mediator, and a negotiator. At 14 minutes 30, we observe a discussion between prison governor Stephanie Roberts-Bibby and another governor grade where they discuss doing a press release, which means carefully controlling the prospective media narrative, which involves deflecting away from the human rights abuses occurring within the prison, which is the root cause of the rioting problem, and placing the blame onto apparent violent, disruptive prisoners, which leads to the public backlash post-media press release, in which the public will generally state that prisoners live in holiday camps and are treated too well and they should be locked up for longer or under harsher conditions. And so the toxic cycle continues and repeats itself and results in the reinforcing of all structural and deep-rooted problems which influence and cause the conveyor belt and the churning out of lifetime chronic recidivists whom are released only to commit more crime and cause more harm to society, and the taxpayer therefore receives zero value for their money. At 23 minutes in, a man on the netting slashes himself and cuts an artery. we see a shot of prison officer negotiator Emma Beeson attempting to help the man. Emma is a nice lady and a good prison officer and a credit to HMP Winchester. Emma is extremely calm under the most hostile and violent conditions and is a role model for not only new recruit prison officers but also for the men detained at HMP Winchester. The self-harm incident shown was something I became desensitized to whilst at HMP Winchester. I became a trained Samaritan's listener and would routinely be called into people's cells who had inflicted horrific self-harm injuries upon their persons. There is a widespread belief regarding the current self-harm and mental health epidemic currently happening in our prisons. This belief is that people only self-harm because they want something or are being manipulative. It is very, very concerning when you listen to and hear supposed NHS prison professionals state that people are only self-harming for these reasons. I have self-harmed in prison, and I've met with and sat in cells for hours and hours with self-harming prisoners, and I can categorically state that when people self-harm, it is because they are suffering and they are in pain and darkness. When we self-harm, it helps us to regain control of ourselves during an existence where we feel helpless, hopeless, and have no control over our predicament. This is not rehabilitation and is not even punishment. This is revenge administered by the current British Tory state and wider society. The British public and the hard-working British taxpayer needs to understand that when the state harms those detained by the courts, the state therefore harms society. It is the 21st century and we are the 5th richest nation on planet Earth. And those detained by the courts should be treated with care, dignity, respect, and with unconditional positive regard. And that is how you reduce recidivism, reduce crime, and make Britain a safer place. And it is not until we understand, recognize, and grasp the concept that all human beings are a work in progress, that we can then work towards revolutionizing the modern British criminal justice and penal system toward a justice system that, yes, prioritizes protecting the public, but also incorporates structures to prevent prison leavers from returning, protects the right to life, and offers the proportionate justice to victims of crime that victims of crime deserve. The lifeblood of the dangerousness renaissance, post-Bulger, post-Sarah Payne, Blair influenced, and now Boris Johnson and Priti Patel influenced, knee-jerk, counterproductive, penal, populist politicisation of law and order era is the state-sponsored hysterical media stridence and sophism which feeds and reinforces everything wrong with our broken justice system and with frightening success. Demonizes the prisoner whilst detained and post-release. Demonizing the prisoner is counterproductive, contributes to recidivism, contributes to increased crime figures, and contributes to costing the taxpayer a staggering $15 billion per annum in reoffending bills. The modern British criminal justice and penal system is an embarrassment. The reputation around the world, authenticity and legitimacy of our once fine criminal justice system is at an all-time low. The modern British Tory state is populist agenda influenced as opposed to the modern thinking stratagem required to resolve this carnage, and as such, Boris Johnson and the Tory Parliament are cementing our once great justice system toward a direction that will, in the not too distant future, be known globally and worldwide as a rogue state nation type criminal justice system where human life is very cheap, is endemic with injustice and favours the rich and powerful, whom, despite the fact that most of these people commit crime, they are protected by the state, whilst at the same time the poor and those from disadvantaged socio-economic communities and those with learning disabilities are demonised, criminalised and disproportionately punished, despite the fact that most people commit crime. At 30 minutes in, I'm struggling to stay awake as HMP Winchester prison governor Stephanie Roberts-Bibby starts talking about rehabilitation. There are many state-sponsored propaganda machines that push the narrative to the ignorant, mainly via Twitter and Facebook and such like. The narrative that prisons are places flourishing with rehabilitation. Excuse me. This is state-sponsored propaganda nonsense. There is no such thing as rehabilitation in the modern British penal system. Prison governors and prison officers are far too busy attempting to maintain control over the prisons to even make anything that resembles a start in attempting to help those detained by the courts to lead law-abiding and useful lives as per the prison service mission statement. So don't believe the hype. There's no such thing as rehabilitation in the modern British prison estate, and the reality is that if you are the victim of crime and the perpetrator is apprehended and sentenced to a term of imprisonment, that person will be detained for, in many cases, long-term imprisonment, will endure, in many cases, catastrophic breakdown in mental functioning due to the long periods of isolation with nothing positive or constructive to do with their time, may become a frequent self-harmer, and will in a lot of cases develop personality disorders and will leave prison with 40 pounds, angry, bitter, resentful, and in many cases with a drug habit, and will be released back into your community. And you, the British taxpayer, pays for this. Vote Tory and this is what you get. So enjoy your overtime.
What we're dealing with here is a total lack of respect for the law. and their law.
I'm going to spearhead the biggest and greatest campaign in global criminal justice history. I will coordinate modern day activists in all capital cities across the continent of Europe. I will coordinate activists across the United States of America. I will swarm the capital city of England with modern day activists. I will flood this nation's cities with a new breed of modern day activism never seen before. I will coordinate my activists and I shall instruct them to apply their enthusiasm in the direction of the infrastructures of both modern America and modern Britain.